Welcome to ECOS Lab. We are in the middle of Sierra Espurnes, surrounded by nature in Aledo, and we are here to talk about the audience and the perspective of the audience in a concert. How do they feel the concerts? Why do they come? And today, what they remember? How can we do for a concert? What can we do for a concert to be a relevant experience, a significant experience? I am surrounded by young ensembles, the Gardeners from Berlin, Flutes and Frets from London, and Entrevescan from Madrid. On my right is David Gutierrez from Anacronia, and I am Jorge from Cantoria and director of ECOS Festival. Today, we are talking to three promoters from different parts of the world. Again, we have Jan van den Borre from EMEA Bruges. Hello, Jan.
Hi.
Nice to have you here. Thanks for coming to attending to this ECOS Lab. We also have Josep Barcons from Espurnes Baroques in Catalonia.
Hi, how are you? Nice to be here.
And we have Suzanne Ryan Melamed from Bloomington Early Music.
Hi, wonderful to see you.
Thank you for being here. We have these conferences, international conferences, supported by Territorios Raspuña and the University of Murcia and Next Generation from Europe. And it's an opportunity to talk to international promoters and international ensembles about the future of early music. A lot has been said the past 2 days. We have compared an early music concert with a Coldplay concert. We have talked about who do we seek in our audiences: children, young people, new people, more diversity among they who come. But today we are talking about the purpose of these concerts and how can we do it meaningful. So let's start knowing the festivals that we'll talk today. Who is their audience and which audience would they like to have? So Jan, you are first.
Hi, yeah. Who is my audience? That's a very good question because MA Festival exists for 60 years this year. So we have quite an old audience in many ways, which also means a lot of things, especially that we have a very knowledgeable audience. They have been through a lot of editions of MA Festival. They have seen Gustav Leonhardt and Tom Koopman and all the other people, and they're very much attached to it. Which is for me a very big challenge and also a very big treasure, because we can talk about a lot of past very good concerts that we can try to compare them to what we do for the moment. Which audience do I want to have? Yeah, like everybody, I would like to say I want a young audience, but I don't think I'm very serious about this, because that's not really the problem we're facing, I think. I do want to stick to the audience I have. I just want to change a lot of the codes and the settings we are working in. This year we have this interesting line in the programmation that we call Younger Than Jesus. That's a thing we stole for the Whitney Museum in New York, where we give a young artist, younger than 33, the opportunity to do something around early music, but coming from their background. The first year, which I didn't program, was still really starting from early music, but this year we really asked a very young and very interesting jazz musician from Flanders, who's playing jazz music and electronic music, to do something with early music. Funnily enough, my audience, my early music audience, completely followed that. So I think there's a lot of possibilities in changing the way the audience looks at your festival or at your programmation if you just change the content without really talking too much about it. We also looking for all the overlaps that we have between an early music audience and an audience that goes into contemporary art and into literature, which is basically, I think, for 75% the same audience, something we are not really aware of. And we have tried this also this year, and we reached quite a lot of people with that. Normally the MA Festival has a catalog, this book of program with a lot of dramaturgy in it. We completely changed that into a book with a lot of art and a lot of literature in it. And for the first time in, I think, 25 years, this book was completely sold out, like at the second day. And a lot of the writers came to the concerts, a lot of the artists came to the concert, and all of a sudden there was some kind of a cross mixing of genres and all kinds of art forms, which was really interesting. But all this still with the same audience. So I cannot say how happy I am with this, because this is really very encouraging. There's a lot of possibilities there. So which audience do I reach? Do I want to reach? Well, actually the one I reached this year, and the one I will, without any doubt, reach next year and the years that are coming, because we are really going to pursue this path even further than we thought we could.
That is very interesting. Thank you. We will ask you later, how do you reach this audience, and what do they remember from that? And hopefully they remember next year and come also to the festival. Let's listen to Josep from Espurnes Baroques.
Okay, so I would say more or less like Jan, because we have also an audience of 50, 60 years, more or less. And because our setting, which is a rural area in the center of Catalonia, I think we can distinguish a kind of public. That's the public that comes to the area to see the festival, to see the concerts programmed. So they are like music users, like normally like consumers and customers of ancient music or music in general, which sometimes it's the 60% or the 40% or the 70% or the 30%, depends on the concert. But the rest, so if we have 70 from urban areas coming to the rural areas, then the 30, it's from the local public, or twisting, 60-40 or 50-50 or inversing. So we can distinguish also this. And for us, it's interesting because some of this public, rural public, has never gone to a concert before, or okay, it's kind of too much saying this way, but they are not used or like usual users of festivals. So getting to, reaching this public that comes to the festival because it's done, the music is done in their area. It helps also that this public, it's not only like feed it with interesting cultural content, but also that they get to know and they appreciate this kind of cultural events, and then may go to urban areas, to Barcelona or to other like cities to listen to music outside the period of the festival. Also, we have seen that we in a different way that what I said, I think don't have a young public coming if we program jazz or contemporary or ethno or dancing concerts, but more or less it's always the same public. So we don't get to new public because of doing other kind of musical styles, but we more or less have the same public or the same average public. And then one of the reasons that of this, I think it might be because we are a decentralized festival, so we are not in a city, so it's difficult to get to reach people that has no driving license or does not have a car or something like this. We have the transport also problem, that they have to come on purpose to the festival. And I think also that one of the fields we can advance is to kind of break the preconception or the prejudgment of what people do think that Baroque music is or ancient music is, because since our festival it's linked with the heritage discoveries, or also with gastronomy or with wine taste, all the things. We have had one anecdote one year that was during the pandemics, that the pop and rock concerts were not allowed. And indeed, the classical music concerts were allowed. And we gave, I think, 3 wines or no, 4 beers, different 4 beers in one concert, because every beer was linked to one piece of music. And we had the comment of people, there were a couple of 30 years saying, oh, it's a nonsense. I cannot go to get drunk to a pop concert, and I got drunk in a Sunday morning concert in an ancient music festival. So I think that if we can, of course, the purpose is not to get people drunk there, but if we can change, like to take some like prejudgment, I think it might help to overcome.
That's very interesting, Josep. Thank you very much. Actually, here in ECOS Festival, we can learn a lot from that because your festival does a lot of things very good, and our festival is also in different villages, and we really learn from what you do, trying to unify culture, music, and territory. And I'm sure you will have a lot of good ideas for festivals like ours, which are more and more needed in rural areas. Let's go to a very different part of the world. Let's listen to Suzanne from Bloomington Early Music Festival.
Excellent. I'm really impressed with how old the other festivals are. I came into this thinking our festival was very established at nearly 30 years, but I'm ashamed of how juvenile we are compared to these other two groups. We have in Bloomington Early Music predominantly a regional audience in South Central Indiana. We border on Kentucky and Illinois and all these Midwestern states in the US. Bloomington is technically a city, and our surrounding region is very rural. For a number of years, of the early years of the festival, Bach in a cornfield was the rather embarrassing logo of the festival. We have, though, an extremely engaged and curious audience, and that is largely due to 40 years of the Historical Performance Institute located in Bloomington. This was one of the pioneering HPI institutes in the United States. And for what it's worth, if there is American royalty in early music, most of them have either been to or are still in Bloomington. So it's a very unusual situation here, and one that we try to take as much advantage of as possible. We do have a very strong, what we call a town gown situation, meaning there's a very large university here, University of Indiana, and so there is often some contention between the university people and the so-called locals, and particularly deeply rooted local families. So this is something that we try to bridge with our programming and with our location. We have previously were running our festival in the university spaces, and a few years ago we pulled out of the university altogether and perform only in public spaces, civic spaces, local coffee houses, the town square, courthouse, etc., churches, of course. And that seems to have made a big difference with people feeling comfortable coming in. And also, one thing I'm very proud of, and hope continues, is that in recent years we brought in about 15 to 20% new audience members, and we're sitting currently about 50% over our pre-pandemic audience levels. Again, this is a you know, a smaller festival, but the percentages really I hope we can keep that up. Our audience skews older, as one might expect. We do, though, have a strong component of 25 to 35-year-olds, and this is largely due to the Historical Performance Institute, and also a very involved and diverse arts community generally in Bloomington and in local in nearby cities. And our live streams, we insist on live streaming and streaming, despite some recent discussions online about how that keeps people from coming to the festivals or to performances. We find kind of the opposite. We have direct feedback from people who are less mobile, either due to disability or age-related, or lack of transportation. And I was just at a city arts fair last weekend, and we had a number of people come by the booth to just express how grateful they were that we do this and that they can now attend. So that's really gratifying to hear. Our live streams and virtual concerts draw audiences from across the region, the United States, and internationally. Last year's virtual was smaller than the year before in the second post-pandemic festival, which makes sense. Our audience has jumped up by 25% as well. So we think people watching at home started to come, local people. And another thing we do to try to reach further into the community is partner with retirement communities to arrange social events in the facilities around our streamed content, and that Bloomington has also recently become a real retirement destination. I'd say in the last 15 to 20 years, there's retirement communities popping up everywhere. And so this is a real service that we try to provide for the people that really love this music but can't attend in person. Let's see, we are aiming, as maybe all of us, for younger audiences and families without alienating or failing to serve older audiences. We need to keep that core while stretching out further. To do this, we integrate into our festival free workshops for kids and senior citizens. Sometimes these are with festival performers. We have a degree of family-tailored programming, and then new directions in social media to try and push out to younger crowds. We also have themed festivals, which I'll talk about later, and these have succeeded in drawing in new younger audiences who are really curious about how old music relates to current social justice issues, women, colonialism, occupation. This coming year, we're focusing on exile, so migration, displaced communities, and diaspora. We do this so that we can reflect current issues in the world, make ourselves more relevant, and also connect with communities that are, that are within these categories themselves today.
That's very.
I was just saying what we expect in the future. If what we're doing succeeds, more diverse audiences in age, background, economic status, and disability. As I mentioned, we are seeing increases in numbers, which is weird, but we welcome it.
That's very interesting, and I'm very, very excited to listen that relevant is a word that came from your speech, because is that something that I would like to ask you? Why are we relevant? Why do we think that the audience should come to our concerts? And how is this how do we make the experience of the concerts relevant? So the theme of the day is what they remember, but in terms of why do they remember and why should they come, and what do we, when they leave the concerts, what do they carry with them? So Jan, you want to start?
Yeah, that's the question. The why question is always the most important question. Why are people coming to the MA Festival? Very honestly, because a lot of those people are used to do that. And if I dare to say, this is one of the advantages of the COVID pandemic, that people are starting to question why they should come to a concert, which forces us to be much more creative in thinking about what a concert should be. I'm going to a lot of concerts myself. I see a lot of things together with Adele, my colleague, and we always have two questions after a concert. Did something happen, and did we just see a CD concert? And to be honest, even the concerts in our festival this year, the ones that were the most boring were the ones that were actually very good, but we could have just replaced them by a CD. I think people want to live something, people want to feel something, and they want to see something happen that they didn't expect. Especially, there's a lot of people coming to the festival in Bruges with a lot of prejudgments and a lot of expectations, and we try not to follow the expectation and not to follow the prejudgment. And in that case, actually, the concert of Anachronia was a very good example, because people were expecting music from the crack, like they say themselves, between Baroque and classical music, and they got something completely different. And the thing that they remembered from this concert was especially the thing that was completely different. So this is the thing we are looking for, very actively. Even we are trying even to talk a lot with artists and talk a lot with musicians about how can we reach that point of doing the unexpected in a very much unexpected way, where people want something else. One of the very good concerts this year, for instance, was our last concert, where we just programmed the Monteverdi Maria Vespers because of a historical reason. There used to be the final concert of the festival for years, but we asked the group that was not ready to do that this year, and they jumped in and they did it. And what people felt afterwards, a lot of people crying actually after the concert. This is what the people felt, was really that somebody was trying to play a very good concert, but without any routine or without any parachute or anything else. So this is the unexpected side of making music, which is very important to us. There's a lot of expectations in Bruges. Since I think we really are the oldest festival of early music around. People are expecting something that really fits into some kind of a scheme that exists since the 70s. If we would program the same program as the people did in 1985, they would still be happy because it follows their expectations, but we would be a very dull and very boring festival. We also try to be a real festival, meaning that we are not the summer programmation of any concert hall, but we're really trying to connect with the audience, and we're really trying to not make them remember the concert, but make them remember what happened that evening and the people they met on this evening. Does this make any sense?
Totally. We were comparing just the concert, as I told you before. Was the difference between a pop music concert and an early music festival concert. Sometimes the relationships with the others, not only what happens with the audience. I would like to ask you, Jan, again, what is what you said? What they remember the evening? What do you mean with that? With the
Well, it's very interesting that you mentioned a rock concert, because I think what I do a lot when I talk to people that are coming to the festival and play is I try to compare it to a Radiohead concert, actually, where you see very good musicians playing together, really playing together, looking for contact and trying to really play together. But this is much more about connecting with the people around you than connecting with the people on stage, actually, because this is first of all, it's physically impossible to connect with the people on stage, but you come to such an event to connect with the people around you through the music that's being played on stage, which is, I fear, in early music, and I think I'm allowed to say this because I've been playing for 30 years myself, we completely forgot. We actually completely forgot the physical side of making music, what it means to be a human on stage and what it means to be connecting with other humans in the hall. For me, this is even a very big problem because I run a very conservative, or not a very conservative, but in spirit, a very conservative early music festival where people are sitting on a chair in a church where you nearly don't touch each other. So we are trying to change all the codes around that, and not what's happening on stage, but more like what's happening in the hall. So that people, when they remember an evening at Ma Festival, they remember that they were there with friends or made new friends or made very nice connections, and all this through a very nice concert. Which is actually something I live when I go to a Radiohead concert or another rock concert.
Make new friends. So that's very, very nice, very nice. You talk about change the code, and well, as Josep said before, Anacronia and Cantoria knows well his festival, and we know that he's breaking codes and making each concert special. Josep, what is what the people remember from your festival? And the second part of the question will be, what is missing in our festival that people should remember?
I begin with the second. I think that if we knew what we miss, we would not have missing on that. So it's kind of tricky question. But I think what people might remember from Espurnes is the feeling of closeness, I think. And this has, I think, some relationship with what Jan was saying, of this sense of course, you have the chairs or the banks in the church, and people is not touching each other as in a pop or a rock concert, but somehow through the tasting after the concert, people get to know each other. It's not in a hall, but maybe it's outside the church or even sometimes inside the church. and there's moment for joining, for talking, and also the fact of having like a separate entrance to the dressing room for the performance, and having some cheese or some wine or the beer of the festival or some cookies or whatever makes that the artist and the audience get to know each other. So it's also a moment that they can connect, not only the audience with the audience, but also the audience with the artist. Also, we try that the concert, it's not something that begins and ends with music, but trying to ask for some interaction. So sometimes making the artists mixing inside the public, arising from a bank, so you don't know when you get to your seat. If there's sometimes we did that, we play with us, having an artist as like part of being of the part of the public, so the public doesn't know that the artist is there. Or sometimes making people enter the church not for the regular entrance, but for a kind of panel or something like this. Or so I think what people might remember from Espurnes is this trying to change the code. And this is the reason I said before that we have to, or we're fighting to break this prejudgment of thinking. We are not in a postmodern, even if you said that in Bloomington, it was a rural area, but you talk about some things that I think are not in the mind of our public, of our audience, like these things of migration or transgender or all these like postmodern concerns. So I think the way we get to appeal the public is by changing this pre-established scheme that makes also to kind of break the prejudgment that people may have. But we don't know yet how to reach people and make them feel that ancient music, it can be like not funny because of funny, but very touching and very like appealing to people. But I think we're quite getting a kind of public that trusts us and come and they spread like the good news, not through a marketing campaign, but by just talking and talking. Please come to this festival because it's interesting, and you're going to feel something which is different there. I think mainly it's, if we had to put into words, trying to create experiences, and also with a kind of charisma that I think the festival has, kind of being like very touching and very like close one to another.
That's very, very interesting. And what role Josep plays the early music ensembles? How do you work? Well, I know, but tell our ensembles here, how can they approach you, for example, to talk about these themes like transgender or diversity? How can they interact with promoters like you to spread this message through early music?
During this past weekend, I have been in FEMA in Estella in a conference organized by HEMA and REMA, and there was a very nice roundtable with Miguel Ángel Marín, the promoter of the Juan Marc Foundation in Madrid, and he was asked by which is the role of the programmer of the someone who is leading a festival, and he answered something which was very relevant to me, which is that to like direct a festival is something which is really creative, and you are the kind of the fourth element in a triangle, or you are in the middle of a triangle between repertoire, between artists, and then public. Of course, as a programmer, you have your ideal public in mind, or you might know what this public, which is also always a question, what do they think, what do they want? So try to have them in mind. And I think the way of approaching is being very open-minded. and trusting the programmer because the programmer knows the public. So being kind of, I would say, very adaptive. For sure, I mean, quality, musical quality is something which is assumed that it's going to be there, but also being very open-minded and with the aim of playing. Because I think that if we recover, I think that ancient music is one of the classical music, if we can put these levels, it's one of the periods where you, as a performers, have more the aim to play and to do things and to investigate and to just play, which is something that in English or in French or in German, the word is the same for playing and for playing, so kids and musicians. But in Spanish, we don't have this word, or in Catalan, we have separate words for playing as a kid or playing as a musician. So I think it's the key to me, it's being open-minded and with this aim of playing and see what's going to happen when you trust who is contracting the group.
Thank you, Josep. What about Bloomington? Suzanne, what do you think people remember from your concerts, and what is missing about the concert format and what the objectives and the vision of our concerts?
To our knowledge, Bloomington Early Music is the only early music festival that orients its programming thematically entirely around underserved or marginalized groups. And our aim is to connect music from the medieval through the early 19th century to contemporary communities through this music. So a big part of our goal and what people take away with them is to educate and enlighten the audiences with an understanding of this music and of each other. We aim to balance between a more heavy-handed discussion of the issues for our specialist audiences, because we do have a very significant core of specialist audience, and then a broadly informal, relaxed atmosphere for everybody else, something that's welcoming, fun, and not stodgy. As I mentioned before, no concert halls, no university spaces, etc. I'll give an example. Our 2022 festival, which was our first of the thematic festivals, was celebrating women in early music. And in this, we addressed women's roles across a wide range, including performers, composers, librettists, patrons, listeners, dedicatees, and subjects. And this was to just show how pervasive women were, despite having been largely erased from the history. And we do this in kind of sneaky ways. We don't bash people over the head with it, or at least we don't aim to. For example, our opening night on that festival was a performance of Bach's cantata Es ist gut, dass ich hingehe, BWV 108. I'm married to a Bach scholar. We intentionally showcase this most white, most male, most European canonical composers, so that people would ask us why. If this festival is about women, why did you start off with Bach? And the reason is that the librettist is a woman, Christiane Marianne von Ziegler. And not only was she a woman, but she was in fact the most renowned poet that Bach ever used as a librettist. She was crowned poet laureate in 1733. She overcame many, many social obstacles. She was twice widowed by the age of 27. Her father was in jail. He was the former mayor, thrown in jail when she was 5 years old in Leipzig. So despite all of this, she worked hard and had great success. So if we skip over Bach, we skip over von Ziegler, and all of her struggles and all of her achievements continue to be unrecognized. And this is the kind of thing we want our audiences to understand and come away with. And at the same time, last year's festival was focused on music of Arabia, Iberia, and Latin America, exploring connections across these regions, etc. And we did struggle with the question of how to enjoy music that came from empire and oppression, colonialism, racism, etc. And we did face this head on in our pre-concert discussions. But then the music itself was glorious, and we were very gratified to hear audience members from across these groups and cultures say that after a week of listening, they could hear the connections, and they're starting to get how history is reflected in music. And that's a really big deal to us. These aren't these people talking are not the specialists at the Historical Performance Institute. I was thrilled to tell, we do have a growing Latino and Muslim community in Bloomington, largely due to forced migration. And the level of pride and surprise to have their own cultures represented and heard at this festival and appreciated was really, really palpable. So we build up community ahead of the festival. We connect with organizations that serve these different groups. We personally invite them to help in some aspect of planning. This is really important. It's difficult because they're not used to planning festivals, but just getting input on timing for things, locations, some help with translations, for example, is really useful. And they push out the information to their clientele, and all of this kind of brings people together and makes them feel more welcome. And again, our point is to say, hey, this music is yours as much as it is anyone else's, and please come and share it, and you belong here. One other point I make, we're this year experimenting with we have one dark night across our week of festivals, and so we're experimenting with a showcase where we'll invite local early music musicians to perform on the main stage as a community activity. Apparently, in years past, the traditional closing night of BLEMF, the worst acronym ever, the closing night of BLEMF it involved many alumni of the HPI, people who played in the festival over the years and joined in on stage with the orchestra. We're not going to do that. It'll be more of a showcase approach, but this is a way to circle back and say, this music is yours, this festival is yours, and we're all a community together.
That's very interesting, Suzanne. Actually, we met in Montreal last year, and there was some conferences organized by Early Music America, and we were with the European Early Music Network, and they were talking about diversity, and I was talking with my European colleagues, and we saw how far away are we in Europe and early music environment from the diversity in early music than you are in America. And my question is, you are talking about community, you have talked about gender, about race. How do you, what do you achieve? I mean, how do you make this community really to interact? Because in Europe, in most of the auditorium, we have at least white and attendants. And sometimes we go to different neighbors. Probably in Spain is more accurate, but probably in France and it's different. But we don't really achieve, at least here in ECOS, to have a more diverse audience and to make them interact. How Jan said, how do you achieve this in Bloomington?
First of all, keeping mind of proportions, right? If we have an audience that's 20% non-white, that's a real achievement given the proportion, just given the proportion of the population and the demographics in our area. So we see that as an achievement, not as you can't get 50-50. It's just not going to happen. There aren't enough people who aren't white where we live. It's just a fact. But what we do is this direct interaction and personally inviting people and networking, word of mouth. I think that that's really important. This point was brought up earlier with, you have your marketing program, but then you need to go out and talk to people and actually say, no, this is for you. You're invited. Having events that are specifically focused on for example, Latino music or dance, or the workshops do that as well. So this is just a way to pull people in and make them feel comfortable. And it's a long haul. It's working, but not that well and not that quickly. I mean, it's incremental. But the fact of the matter is, another serious consideration is that the vast majority of funding that's available for for music of this sort really pivots on how are you approaching diversity and how are you achieving these goals, and what are you doing specifically to do that. So, you know, it's something we do from the heart, but it's also something we do because it's really an imperative in this country now.
That's very interesting, and I'm glad to hear. We see that our communities are changing, but not all their audiences are. So let's listen what our ensembles think about that. I will give the word to Santiago from the Gardeners, an ensemble based in Berlin that will play tomorrow Baroque music and contemporary music.
Yes, contemporary music by the date of the composition more than the style. But yes, thank you for all the informations and the ideas you shared. I think it's a great inspiration for us for the artistic direction that we want to take as an ensemble. What I gather from everything that I heard, I kind of project the space of the concert, of the events, as a kitchen, you know? So where we cook something and we work with ingredients, and at the end things happens that people remember, you know, in a certain way. And so from the elements I keep in mind in this kitchen is first to trust people, that we can challenge them, from what I've understood, especially from the festival from Brugge. Sometimes I have the feeling in some festivals, or in the way we perceive like the music that we want to address to the mass, that we kind of infantilize sometimes also the public. And I think it's very important that we properly challenge the public, meaning we have to be very creative, because people can be very creative. They are actually, I think, in a sense, in the core. And for that, we are using our tools is early music. And from early music, we can take a lot of things. Early music help us to remember things that sometimes we might have forget. For example, the idea of intimacy. I think in the last century, until the last century, we tended to always play in wider spaces, to have louder instruments, and so to reach the philharmonies, and of course, in the when we go to more popular music, to football stadiums and this kind of formats. And I think everything gets always louder and louder and louder. And with the early music, I have the feeling that even like when we look to neoclassicism, the new neoclassicism, not the one from Prokofiev, but the one now like piano and kind of close to film music and this kind of aesthetic, I have the feeling that people are more and more interested to this human contact, to get closer to get closer to the artist, to get closer to the instruments, to get closer to the people who are coming, also to the other people who are coming to listen. I think it's an opportunity for us to develop this. For example, I play also clavichord, and this instrument is it was a great teacher for me for that. Playing for 40 people, and at the beginning, the people are like, in the 5 first minutes, they just don't understand what's happening, and if they're actually going to hear anything. And after 5 minutes, actually, we are experiencing a silence that we just forgot in our lives. Yes.
Can I reply immediately? I hear a lot of very interesting things. First, I think you can connect two things now. You can connect something what Santiago is saying to something what Suzanne is saying. I think the main thing is when you want to make music, or you want to be in the audience, whatever way, you need to practice what you preach. That's it. If you want diversity in your concert hall, you need diversity in your team. Otherwise, it's not going to work. If you want intimacy in the audience, you need intimacy on stage. I mean, you're speaking about a clavichord, and you're completely right. But I went to the first concert tour that Nick Cave did after his son died, and he played in a concert hall in Antwerp, where there were 30,000 people. I have never been so close to an artist as then. I was like at 150 meters from him. I brought my 2 daughters, and they were crying. I mean, for me, a concert is never about the music. The early music is always a default setting. I see too many groups trying to get into the MA Festival with, I don't know which cancionero, and saying that they found a manuscript somewhere. It's not about music, it's about values. When you, again, Anachronia, hi, people didn't see concert, people did see a bunch of young puppies playing in a nest or something like this. They saw friendship on stage. And it's that's a very important thing to see, because you will be playing for the next of your life for people who are very spoiled. They can go to a soccer game, they can watch Netflix, or they can stay at home with their friends. You need to be the added value, and the added value is always about values, like I said, about emotions. So intimacy, yes, please bring it to a stage in Bruges, but bring it on a level that it's as high as possible. And for me, this is crucial. Again, I run an early music festival, and it's always about early music, but that's the starting point, and it should never be the ending point. And that's most of the case. It's that is the case. I mean, for me, the why is much more important than the what and the how. So if you say intimacy, then please make a program about intimacy and bring it to a stage, and see how you can drag people into your imagination.
Intimacy. Oh, sorry, Suzanne.
The microphone.
Go ahead. I'll speak after you, Susan.
Sorry, and I just wanted to talk. Yesterday, I was talking to Beth and Daniel from Flutes and Frets, and talking actually about the atmosphere that they create when they play. And it was actually the word that came a lot of time was being part of something intimate, something precious and fragile. And I don't know, how do you listen to these conversations between Jan and Santiago?
I think it's really interesting, all of this talk about interaction, and we often get comments about intimacy, and maybe it's just because there's two of us and we're smaller, but it's something that we've never thought about or tried to do. And I think sometimes, especially in this culture, there's a tendency to want to tick the boxes. So yes, we've got inclusivity, we've got this, we've got that. And actually for it not to just be about ticking boxes or trying to force something, but kind of staying true to self. And I think it's hard to get the balance between forging change, but also not being false or doing it just for the sake of doing it, and having real meaning behind, like you were saying about the why, like, why are we doing this? Is it because we actually believe in it, or is it just because we need something different, sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting that you say that you pronounce the word ticking boxes, because you never should be ticking boxes, of course. And if you mention inclusivity, I don't think that's the responsibility of the ensembles, but more the responsibility of the organizers. You just need to be very good in what you're doing. And to use a marketing term, you always need a USP. You need a reason why people should program you and not another duo of flute and frets. I mean, I've seen you in IAP, I know what you're doing. And for me, it's very clear, and I think for the audience as well, that you really are looking for this human factor, and you're never looking for the instrumental factor or the musical factor or the musicological, in the worst case, factor. You're looking for some kind of an event. And if you, let's stick with intimacy. Intimacy is a very loaded word and a very important word nowadays. If somebody can do it, then I think it's you. Playing with two people and not the loudest instrument on the planet, you can create a very beautiful, intimistic atmosphere. But again, it's not your responsibility to be inclusive. This is the thing we should do.
Yes, Suzanne. Just I want to say, before that, we are talking about shared responsibility. So, like, we are allies to we think, at least in ECOS, and that's what we are working here at the ECOS lab, that it's a common challenge. So Jan, you just said it's not our challenge as our ensemble, it's a promoter's challenge. What do you mean with that?
Well, I think an ensemble should be worried about what they are doing artistically, and they shouldn't be worried about ticking boxes anyhow, because they don't know in which constellation they will end up. If I listen to Josep and to Suzanne, we are all three of us, we are working in completely different circumstances. There's no rural circumstance in Bruges. We are a small town with a very wide population in a small country trying to reach a bigger audience. It's very different from the conditions that Josep is working in the middle of Catalonia or Bloomington. So I think for me, a very interesting group is the group that sticks as close to the human core as possible, or to the artistic core as possible. And the shared collaboration, the shared responsibility comes from dialogue. We need to talk about what you will be doing in my festival, and I will tell you where we can work together and be as strong as possible in doing that. And I'm not the one who's just going to give you a stage. We are going to try to give you a stage that is working for both of us. But if you try to be ticking as many boxes as possible, you will compromise, and I don't want anybody to compromise on the stage in Bruges.
Thank you. Suzanne, what did you think about what we are saying?
Intimacy is key, but also I would say fun. I think the key is breaking down the fourth wall and engaging, and not being up on a concert stage separate from the audience, but being interactive, whether that's through looking at people, pointing them out, just smiling, for God's sake, you know. I mean, one of the things, when I spoke with my program committee about Cantoria and showed some of your videos, the one thing other than your glorious sound, of course, that came out was your engagement, and how it was just so enrapturing, and not, there wasn't this plexiglass between the audience and the performers. It was interactive in a way, even if you weren't sitting on people's laps or shaking their hands. So that I think doesn't, intimacy, yes, if the music calls for it, or if the circumstance calls for it, but also just positive energy and fun, and going back to what music at the time was. It was, you know, it was performed in spaces that weren't stiff, and everybody didn't wear black, and you didn't have to be quiet the whole time as an audience member. So just and that's what I think is so remarkable. What we need now is what it seems that music was at the time. So that, I think, is important. And the other thing I want to say is I really appreciate the point about not infantilizing audiences. Thank you for saying that. And that, I think, means both the specialist devotees and the newcomers, and giving them various levels to engage on. So those that need that deeper engagement can be challenged by it and dig in, but also those who just need or want to sit back and enjoy and listen and interact and be moved can do that as well. So thinking on a few levels is useful.
Thank you, Suzanne. Josep?
Yeah, I completely agree on what Suzanne and Jan said, but maybe trying to go a bit further, and maybe I dare to summarize or to get a bit further on what you said. Suzanne, we're talking about engagement, and I would even say, like, try to being kind of in love of what you are doing, kind of getting this kind of wrinkles or something that I think as a public and also as a promoter, as an audience, you can really feel this. So I completely agree that with Jan, that ancient music or music is just the pretext, or just something. Of course, it's in the core of what we do, but it's the media through which we get to reach people. And finally, I think the thing goes on appealing what people feel. If you would do it through dance, through painting, through music, through whatever, I mean, it's not the core, even if it's the core of what you do. So having the sense of playing, of being engaged, kind of in love, or just being, I think, with kind of being in the line of the music you are playing, kind of going to the truth, not to the historical truth of every piece of music or of every period, which of course we have to, or you know a lot about this on your research projects, or going to the original documents and the treaties and all these things, but going to the kind of very truth of what you are doing. And I realize I'm a lot in this thinking on going to the inner child we have inside. And maybe this is the reason I recently listened to a group from Andalusia, which is Artefactum. They play also medieval music, and they are in their 60s, and they are like, it's a kind of party every concert. Of course, this is because it's a kind of medieval music they are playing. But if it's something like we did with you, with Cantoria, Jorge, with Victoria, so being to the truth of that music. So it means not only the notes played there, or just going into the mood of how this music was performed. And I think if you go to the mood of the music in itself, then you reach the public.
What do you think? Thank you, Josep. What do you think, Jan?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I just want to go back a few conversations back, because you were talking about the word playing, and of course tocar in Spanish. Yeah, I think it's all about playing, actually. But as a programmer, you go for the sparkle in the eye of the artist. Of course, if you can find the program that brings the most light in the eye of the people who want to play it, you have a very good program. And I think it's a very good moment to zoom out a little bit, because we had a very good example of what we don't want to do anymore with John Elliott Gardner, who smacked somebody in the face for going on the wrong side of the stage. I've been playing for 30 years. I've been playing with all the psychopath narcissists in early music. You can fill out the names if you want to yourself, but I think it's really time for a big change now. And this is the change your generation has to bring to our stages. This is not about dominance anymore. This is not about authority anymore. But I think we really entered the age of trust and confidence and friendship and playing. And this is what people want to see. I think I've been playing 250 St. Matthew Passions with Philippe Herwege, and the only thing people saw was Philippe Herwege, and this is not interesting anymore. You want to see people on stage playing together and playing for you and doing something very special for you from a completely different set of values than what we used to see in early music until now.
That's very interesting, Jan. Thank you. I would like to ask. Well, I will give the word to our third ensemble here, to Entrevescant, Livia, and then we will. I will ask something else. Livia, hello.
Hi, thank you for this interesting and stimulating debate. I think that something that is important, maybe especially about what you said, Jorge, with diversity here in ECOS, is that here we're, for example, with Suzanne, and Spanish sociology is pretty different to North America. So I think we have a big problem here with the education and the real possibilities of, especially when it comes to race, the real possibilities of those people to even know that this exists. I guess probably most racially diverse people here in Murcia are working in agriculture, and then maybe don't have the interest, time, or knowledge to approach here. So I think you would have to go looking for them. So that's kind of what I was going to speak about, how we in Entrevescant try to enforce diversity. As I said, we had a focus on rural and traditional repertoires. And it's not only about what we perform, it's also about where we perform. And we are trying to go to as much small places in Spain as we can. And we are trying to present our music in places where, and it has happened more than once. We've been this summer in several places where they had never had a medieval ensemble playing. So for us, that is really important. So it's good for us because we are not a festival. We are an ensemble, so we can move wherever we want. So for us, it is being really important to go look for that diversity. And when we are not going somewhere we have chosen, but we are invited to a festival, like for example here, I think what we try to do and our, let's say, political engagement comes from our attitude towards our repertoire and our attitude towards the people hosting us. So I think the thing is when we go to places where our audience has it's a little bit, I'm thinking, has a higher education, like for next week we are playing in the center of Madrid and we are playing at an archaeological museum, and we are probably going to have a pretty educated audience, and sometimes they enjoy the music, but sometimes they overlook some of the music we play because it dances and it's repetitive and it's simple. So for us, I think it's an effort to make the people that overlooks our music take it seriously and understand that it's the heritage from centuries of certain social needs being reflected in the music. And when we go to the rural areas where they actually value the music, to show them that we professional musicians with a high education consider their heritage a really valuable thing that we want to care and to disseminate. So I think there are many different ways to enforce diversity and to try to connect. Also, I was looking at the Bloomington Festival earlier, and you had this sentence somewhere in the website that says connecting people to history and to each other through music. I think for us is very important to try to connect people to their history. So just to say that I think there are many different ways to enforce and search for diversity, and in our case it has to do with our love for the music we play and with the way we adapt to different sociologies in our concerts. Thank you.
Thank you. Connect the people through their history. Jan.
Yes, I have so many things now. First of all, can I ask, how do you do it to go to places where you want to play? Or did I misunderstand that? So you pick places in rural Spain to go to, or?
Well, for example, now we are in a pretty special convocatory. Is that call, in a very special call? Yeah, that we are actually enjoying a lot. It's meant for rural areas in Spain that have been affected by ecological transition. So people where they had coal mines and things like that have been closed. So we are going to a lot of very little places in the industrialized areas. So searching for that kind of calls, and also just, I don't know, since we are in traditional music, I guess we have some contacts in those kind of areas. So we just try to work that and reach to a small town halls and things like that. So we seek for places.
Yeah, and how do you finance this?
How do
you get paid?
Yeah. I understood. Well, they pay us. I mean, this is happening in Spain, and I guess in many different places there is a lot of funding now for. Well, there is this problem of depopulation of the rural areas, and institutions are worried and are funding projects, at least in Spain, are funding projects to trying to bring some life to those areas. So I guess we benefit from that.
Yeah, that's good. Not in Belgium. Yeah, but what is very interesting about this is that what you're actually saying is that you're using the stage as some kind of a platform to talk about what you want to talk about. And again, this is not about music. This is about a political agenda or some kind of a human agenda, which is extremely, extremely interesting to me. Because by making music, and you say traditional music and early music, you are really telling a story and you're telling people what you want them to hear. And I think most of us underestimate how many people will hear this. We have all these communication channels now to do so much more than just playing music on a stage, which makes it extremely important. because there's something very interesting in the particularity of a lot of things. You can call it Spanish early music or Spanish folk music, but it can be very universal for another audience as well if you tell your story from a very deep believing of it, I think.
Thank you. That's
Thank you, Jan.
interesting.
We were saying before, or you were saying a lot of ideas to track and and Jan actually was talking about going to the human core. That was enough. You said that for this is our part, and we have been talking about compromise. What do we do when it is not enough? I mean, sometimes we do the best we can. We show ourselves, we play the music. We were talking about on the first day with the gardeners, we were talking about compromise between what we want to do and sometimes it's not what the audience wants to listen, or what we are and it's not what the audience need. So how do we find a compromise between that, and when what happens when it's not enough and then we need to achieve more people or to achieve more changes and in the people? Jan?
Why do you say that people doesn't want to hear it? Where does it come from? I think in a lot of cases when you run a festival, the people are really following much more than you think. And let's face it, the compromise is never good. In Bruges, we just ditched all the themes because we think a theme is marketing and forces people to go into compromise, which makes every program a little bit weaker, I think. But when it comes to people not following, I'm not sure that that's the case. If you bring your program very convincingly, everybody will follow, I think.
What do you think, Josep? Did you have the experience of the feeling when something is not working, or when it's not enough people coming, or when do you have the feeling that an artist should change their speech or their story? How do we deal with that?
Okay, when everything is running, I mean, alea jacta est. So you can do almost nothing when it's on the stage and something is and you can begin to block yourself and begin thinking, oh, what have I done not properly, talking to the artist, or maybe he has sent me a video which is I mean, you can begin with all this, or just stop all this during the concert and try not to prejudge. Also, it's something I was saying before, that audience should not prejudge and be open. So I try also to be open and say, okay, it's disappointing me, or something that's not going as I would like from the artist, let's say now, and just relax. So first of all, not blocking myself and prejudge the whole concert for something that maybe has happened at the beginning. But I think that you as a promoter can see this not when the concert starts, but even before, even not in the rehearsals, just when you have the personal contact. So I think I've never been disappointed, or that's something that really, I've seen someone that on stage is very different from what I've seen before personally. So if I have the personal contact, I think that barely never something disappoints me after, because you get to know the person. So you know how, I think everyone plays in the way he or she is. So if you know the person, then probably you know how they are performing. Then being disappointed when audience is not coming. Yeah, of course you would like always that the concert is full and it's sold out, but there are so many factors. If it's raining, if it's at a moment that in a rural area there's another, okay, you have all the considerations in mind not to do a concert in the same moment that there's a party, or of course I mean, you can think on everything, but in our case the conditions are so changing from one concert to another, and the place is so different from one year to another, and that you never know. It's so many multifactorial that of course you can analyze all the items, but I think I've never reach the answer. However, I'm glad that we have had no concerts with less than 50 people, which is not bad. And then you get to compare to for churches with a capacity of maybe 100 people. So it's just the middle of the audience you might have there fitted. And then if you make also an exercise of saying, how many people do you have in a rural area of a village with 300 people, putting people from outside this area, from not local public, but to outside, and then what is happening in Barcelona or in Lleida or in some cities with some programs or concerts or functions or theater or whatever, with 40 or 30 people. So maybe we're not doing it so bad. So maybe 50 people in a rural area, it's like 200 people in a city, or 2,000 people in a city. So I think I have not answered the question, but
It is fine. It is fine. It's just that we are here to find new ideas. So I have the feeling we are talking about what we already do, and this is nice. And I'm trying to push a bit of what we can do, the new things that we can do. So maybe Suzanne has any new idea or something to bring to the table. Suzanne, give us the answer.
I will try. I think this question, if I understand it correctly, kind of brings together a lot of things we've been talking about, and that is, who are your audiences as a presenter? If you know your audience tends to be in one direction, don't engage a group that isn't going to, like, that's up to us, I think, in a way, to make sure that we line up ensembles that are going to give our audiences what they want, more or less. I think also that the audiences should know ahead of time what they're walking into, right? Occasionally I'll get a scathing comment from, I think, one of two people in our core audience here in Bloomington, who basically just say, who cares about all this stuff? I just want to hear Beethoven, or whatever. And there are always going to be those people. But then why did you come to the concert if you saw what it was about, right? So in a way, it's not on the performer's back. But again, going back to everything we've been talking about, if you're open and engaging and loving what you're doing, as Jan said, people are going to follow. They're going to be engaged with it. And so I think it's a matter of, maybe you think you're failing because they're not smiling at you or something, or the two people seem to be asleep or something, but they just express it differently. And if you're dealing with different cultures, for example, people respond differently depending on their cultural circumstances, right? I just heard a story the other day of an opera singer who teaches here at IU, internationally famous, blah blah blah, and her first time singing in Europe, she's American. In America, in an opera, people go nuts after an aria, right? They just start clapping and whatever. And so she sang this brilliant aria, and the audience was like crickets. Nobody was clapping, right? She thought, oh my God, they hate me, But in fact, it was a cultural difference. At the end of the entire opera, they were just on their feet for 20 minutes. So if you're sensing something, you might be over processing it, and just continue to give when you're on stage.
Thank you. I think we had a lot of ideas. We still have some minutes, and the before the golden minute of the three speakers at the end, we will have some questions from the ensembles. The objective of that is that they can see, well, how can they help, or what can they do, or how can you help them. So the first question will be from Flutes and Frets from London. Beth?
Hi, so something that we've been thinking about when trying to address change and suggesting something new or wanting to try something new, how would one go about that without offending a promoter? For example, if you wanted to conduct a concert that was much more informal than the festival usually has, or something like that, how would you suggest it? Or is it worth suggesting it, or the kind of do's and don'ts with regards to that?
Suzanne?
I would say simply, if this is a venue you really are determined to perform in, give them two options. Perhaps say, you know, we have two options. There's a formal and an informal, and you can explain your rationale for the informal. I mean, in our organization, we would be all over that. We would love it, but many won't and will be nervous about it. So you can give like a justification for it, but give them two options, and then perhaps they can make their own choice, and then you can go from there. Keep your explanation short, maybe a link to a video example of the kind of performance you're talking about, so they don't have to work too hard to figure out what you mean. But I think just saying, I can do A or I can do B, here's why we think B is great.
Jan?
Yeah, I think everything starts with a dialogue, no? I mean, whenever you, I mean, I can host like 30 concerts a year every summer. There's not one concert that I decide to give a place without a dialogue, preferably with a coffee or wine in between us, so that everything is very clear before you play one note. There cannot be any surprises on the stage, I think. This is also what I meant when I said I went for the sparkle in the eye. If you only send me a mail and I just pick things from my mailbox, I will be surprised a lot of times. I think 70% of the time I will be surprised. This is not what I want. So you just send a proposal and we talk about it. And most of the cases, you end up with something completely different than what both ends of the table wanted. So yeah. You just need to talk with people, I think.
Thank you. I don't know if Josep wants to add something.
Maybe I don't know it's going to be relevant, but I think you might consider if it's this going farther of what the festival is used to. It depends if it's the first like mail saying, okay, we want to do something which is really different. It's not my case, but maybe someone can feel like uncomfortable saying, okay, they're saying that I'm not doing things as they should be. So they are so innovative, and who am I? So it can be like some distorting. But going to Jan, if this happens when you are in dialogue, I think if it's a reasonable thing and it's something that can like apport something, new ideas, because we are dealing with the music and you know what you are doing and how it's you re-expressing and all these things, then of course the promoter is going to like get this thread and go and go and go. And for sure it's something you believe in, the promoter, I think it's getting to be, let's say, honored that you want to apport something to the festival. But if this is just the very beginning, so okay, we're so innovative that maybe someone can like just close the doors. So I think it depending on what moment you begin to say, okay, I want to do something very innovative. And also I think it's interesting that don't address like general mails to all the festivals. Okay, what is and what to do this. So just look a little bit at the programs of every festival, because every festival has a line. So maybe, okay, what's your line for 2025, or would we, or then you can like more a little bit address. And it's not, and also saying, okay, what are a young promise of the ancient music? It's like, that's random, and that's every group. It's the young promise, very promoted, and very like everyone can. So just trying to focus a lot and go in the direction of the festival. So then the festival gets to know that you have interest, not in just playing, but in playing in that festival, and that you can afford something there, which is important and relevant.
Thank you very much, Josep. Jan, do you want to add something?
There's a flip side to this, of course, because you will not always have a promoter or an organizer that wants to go in dialogue. But I think you're such a nice generation. You have all the means of communicating. I think we had the same talk like last year in Antwerp when you were at IAP. Just, I mean, you have the best photographers, the best video makers. You can communicate so good about what you want to do. Just make sure that nobody can have a doubt about what you're doing. I cannot tell you how many mails I get that are actually always the same. We are this group, we have this instruments, and we play this music. Well, I couldn't care less, because then you just become interchangeable with everybody else, which is not what you want to be. and this is not what I want to have. So you just need to make sure that what you want to do is as clear as possible, and you have all the artistic means available to do that.
That's very interesting. Thank you, Jan. We were laughing here because we have been doing this career development, and we have been talking about that. One very peculiar ensemble, and we will talk about a lot about them, is Entrevescant, and Livia has also a question for today.
Hi. So before the question, actually, just a quick note about earlier when you asked, I didn't expect the question. It was a good question. How do we finance this? Well, it's also a choice of how much do you want to earn. So maybe we are all willing to have a few hours of university or teaching job, and being able to go to these places, and also compensating when you play in a city and you are paid better, then you can go to a little place and have a worse paid gig. So just that. And then our question, so we were here today to talk about what audiences remember, and our question has to do with what kind of strategies do you as promoters value and are willing to integrate in your festivals that you think could help audiences to remember better their experiences and the messages the artists try to bring on a stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, go, Jan.
Yeah. Well, it's all about storytelling, I think. We as a festival, we are telling our story, and you as a group, you're telling your story. That doesn't have to be the same story, of course. It just needs to be, how to say this? We need to make each other's stories stronger. I can go to Anacronio again, but I won't. We'll tell another story now. We have this thing I actually don't really like very much at the MA Festival, which is a biking tour where you bike from one concert to another. For me, that's too easy, but I'm trying to use it as a platform for young musicians. And this year, I found a group that consists of people in France that are playing with the biggest orchestras like Les Talents Lyriques and Les Arts Florissants, stuff like this. They don't want to be disconnected from the audience anymore. So instead of flying to a concert and then going to a bar with their friends and having the same conversations all over again, they decided to do tours in France on a bike and to engage with the people. So they ride a bike from one concert to another. They just play pour le chapeau, for what's coming into the head, and they try to sleep in people's houses. They try to connect with the people there. They drove from Paris to Bruges to do the same thing in Bruges. Of course, we paid them. We didn't put a head there because this is not something I want to do. But it was funny how people in the audience reacted to that, because they were just playing a normal concert. They're amazing musicians. They were playing a normal concert, but just the story of coming there with a bike. All the people went to them after the concert and tried to talk to them and actually tried to connect to them, which they wanted to do. So that's the story, and that's not really the story of my festival, but I use it in the story of my festival, and everybody loved it. So again, you need to stick as close as possible to what you want to do and why you want to do it, and then tell it as good as possible, like I said, by all the means you have, and then people will automatically be interested, I think.
Okay, thank you.
And for the last minutes, oh, Josep, I don't know if you wanted to add something. You want to play with the mobile phone? We see.
No, to get
No.
to unmute. Yeah, it's something like this. I completely agree also with Jan. I think I was thinking I don't know if you know that biologist called whose name is Lynn Margulis. She kind of changed the way evolution was told, saying that evolution came because of symbiosis, not because of who is the strongest, but because of symbiosis. And I think we're on the same boat. So trying to mix the two questions, the first you said about the fees, and the second one about how to doing things or getting. I think it has to do with a deal, and not only a commercial deal. So what we want as promoters is that our product. I don't like to talk about it in these commercial terms, but I'm going to do even to go to the other extreme of my feeling. Even if I think that it's only a product I have to sell, I want to sell this product. So you are my product. And also, as promoters, are your product or your means to get your product to the public. So we're strictly on the same boat. So it's not a commercial deal that finally, of course, we have to put a fee, you have some amount of money for the traveling or for the hosting or whatever. But I think it's a deal in the very deep sense of the word. I mean, it's something that we have to really think and feel and like to aim the same. Otherwise, something it's not going to work. And I think it's this question, being on the same boat. And finally, this maybe can give you the difference and if between an urban or a rural festival, or let's say with a big budget or a or a low budget. I mean, I think it's to do that feeling that everyone does the maximum of what he can do according to his or her or its circumstances. Otherwise, we are going to feel bad. And of course, everyone would be like better paid always, I think, because we're this way. But I think if we get to know each other, then we can have like a good deal. Not only commercial, but and it has to do with the conversation, with having coffee that Jan was talking about, of just getting to know each other and know the eyes of the other and so all these things.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much. We are a bit out of time. And I don't know if Santiago from the Gardeners want to add the last thought or a small question. We still have 5 minutes.
Okay. So we had a question, but I think it's not really relevant anymore because the question was, what is the, I mean, it will be actually at some point, but what is relevant for you? What is your experience that you lived as a promoter that has been remembered from the public in different concerts, like just different examples? I think, I mean, because in a way I didn't find so relevant now because I kind of understand that there is like one core, which is, and it came all the, like in all the sessions we had, like the story and the love for our stories, and it's in like all the scales from the moment where we play our music, every note we play, to believe in it. That's kind of the ground. And yeah, for me, the best teachers I had were the ones who are only talking about this. And then the other scale is about the program, conceiving the program, the music. That's what starts before the music and what comes after the music. And in a more professional organization way, how we communicate this between the concert, like to the promoters. How do we reach the promoters and sharing this same core, this same love, no matter what is the content? Of course, we will talk to early music festivals because we do early music. But no matter the content, the important is the core. And that's kind of what I take from the 3 sessions we had from the ECOS lab. I think the most important core. Maybe I had two questions. These examples, maybe just for as an artistic question, what are maybe the most remarkable elements that you had experienced? For example, this idea of the bicycle, so concert format or music program. What are the elements that you experienced from that? And maybe the other question, I don't know if we have time to answer also to this one, but okay, maybe you can choose which one is the best. How do we share in the most effective way? How do we communicate this love to you promoters? What, like, our program, our ideas, our projects?
Well, that's a big question. And Suzanne, do you want to start?
Okay. I think answering the first question about what was memorable and most impressive to me as a promoter, somebody brought up integrating different genres, dance, right, movement dance, things like that. I don't remember who that was. There was a concert this past year. Our closing night concert was an ensemble from Mexico City. Their name is Tempembe, and they just spontaneously, it seemed spontaneous. They're very professional, so they're good at making things seem spontaneous. Started dancing and brought, I mean, it was a little Bruce Springsteen moment, brought somebody up from the stage, a little kid, it was wonderful. And we were in a venue, a small church, sightlines aren't terrific, but the whole audience was just going out of their seats. It was really engaging. It was very visceral. And again, it seemed spontaneous. They may do this every concert, but it just felt like they were giving to the audience in a way like, play with us and let's have a great time, and let's move together. And that was really it was beautiful. It was it was fun. It was really, really beautiful. I'm afraid I forget what the second question was.
I'm sure Jan remembers because he was willing to talk.
But am I talking? Okay. First of all, what Suzanne is saying is very interesting about the dancing. Don't try this in Belgium. We are Flemish. We don't move, so people don't like that. So you really have to know who you're playing for. That's very important. And then second of all, how do you reach us? Well, you just come up on our radars in a way that you want to come up on our radars. We're always looking, and like Josep is saying, you need us, but we need you as well. So we're always looking for the best group available. You need to be the one that we choose if you think about something. In French, you have the word incontournable. You need to be the one that comes up the radar, and you have all the means. Just go on Instagram. I'm on Instagram all the time. Just come on my radar and tell me that I need you, and then we get in touch. And second of all, I was talking about the coffee or the wine. If ever a promoter tells you, I would like to talk to you and have a coffee, jump on a plane or a train or a bus and come over, because that means something. It means much more than answering a mail. I'm still struggling with answering mails. I get like a dozen mails a day, and in most of the cases I want to say I'm not really interested, and then I'm just saying like, I don't have place this year, and they say, yeah, we'll come next year, and I say, nah. So find a way to get in. And the first level is come on the radar. The second level is reach out, and if we say come over, then please come over. It might cost something, but do so. That's very important to know, I think.
That's very nice. Josep, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think what I said before to Flute and Fred, that you have to look for which is the line of the festival. I think it applies completely to who is the promoter of a festival. For instance, Jan said he's looking on Instagram. I have no Instagram. Because I don't like to program just like, I have made a decision on my life, on my personal life, that I'm not going to fight to have virtual life, because I have enough with my real life. Then I don't get to know groups because of Instagram, because the world is like, it's immense. I mean, I've never going to get to know the better group, on my opinion, through Instagram. So instead, I've moved by kind of circles of trust. I mean, if Jorge is playing with Guti, and then Guti is playing, and I'm happy with Guti of what he did the first year in the festival, and I'm so glad that in our 6th edition he is the main character of our poster. So yeah, it's absolutely, you can applaud him because it's amazing. I mean, his way of being to me, it's like, and also Jorge's, but I mean, maybe the main thread was good for his personal charm. Then I think it's interesting, even if having your own project, get to have other projects also, not maybe your core one that you have. And maybe it's interesting that you are focusing in one project, but also trying to collaborate, because that's the way, not through Instagram, but through this or through this meeting. I could smell how you play because of our conversation, because of your attitude here when I'm talking, and or when Jan or when Suzanne is talking. For this was the reason I had problems with my unmuting, because I wanted to see everything on my screen, on my small screen of my iPhone 13 mini, like this, no? And I mean, get to find the way. One maybe is Instagram, and it's perfect. And I think it's amazing that Jan does things through these means, but I do it through another. So try to get to know all the means you can reach a promoter, because for sure you have a lot to say. But to me, this way of saying, I need to see you for real. And Jan, maybe he's for real, because I think that the three of us here want to see you for real. It's through first doing a kind of browse in Instagram and then get to have a coffee. But for my personal situation, I have no time to do that, or I have decided to do it in the other way. So I think that get to find the way of, okay, being in ECOS Labs is interesting. You are reaching us. So trying to find these ways, but not stressing on this. I think the main thing, at least to me, the word truth is very important. Not having the truth, because I think there's not a truth, but feeling with very a humble way and very like quiet way and very like connected way that you are doing what you want or you have to do.
Well, we are in the middle of Espurnes. We have a bell saying us it's time to go, but we're very passionate on that, and I would like to listen to Suzanne and also to Mireia from the Gardeners, and then I'm not know if you have still 5 minutes more, Jan and Josep, or you are in a hurry and you have to leave. We can take these 5 minutes then, because I will have a last question for this golden minute. But first, let's listen to Suzanne, please.
As Josep said, we have different ways of communicating and of reaching out. Bloomington Early Music has a call for proposals, and please check it out on our website. We have a call for proposals. We're in America. You can't just hop over for a coffee here. So be open to being on Zoom like we are right now. I am personally trying, and thanks to the initial meeting with a lot of people from RIMA at the Montreal conference, trying to bridge the Atlantic, and the circumstances of performing are so different, and just the way that people conduct their performing lives. In the United States, we have performers who are of your general age group who are in 5 ensembles because they can't focus on one. They have to spread out because the funding is so bad, and so it's just such a different scene. And I'm always so impressed with what I see going on in the EU. But you want to just kind of recognize that there are many different ways of connecting, and it's not always going to be obvious necessarily.
Thank you, Suzanne. Well, let's listen to the last intervention from the Gardeners, in this case, Mireia.
Yeah, hello. I just wanted to give some feedback, because one of the things that makes me very encouraged and relieved is that these 3 days we've been hearing from you that the human factor to reach actually the spaces is what prevails. That of course internet is like a trampoline, like a platform, but it's not all, and that the last word always goes to come to talk to us. And that for us as an ensemble, while building the project, that we've been told, which I think it's true, but that to put a lot of effort in the social media, internet, I think that needs to be. I think that's how we reach people our age, but that ultimately talking and keeping the human factor is what is also important for you, gives us a lot of hope and and makes us very happy. I think I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Mireia. Thank you very much. To finish, oh, Jan, yes.
Yeah, I think something very important in the human factor is that you can always reach out to us just to ask feedback on what you're doing. People are always sending me concert programs, and then I just say that I'm taking them. Just ask me something. Just you can send me something and ask me what you think about this. This is also very interesting for me to see who's out there and what they're doing. Because if I'm only judging on Instagram, then I can also prejudge, which is never good. So you can always send me a draft of a program. I will never judge you on a draft. I will always answer. If you want to have a Zoom and I have time, we will have a Zoom. But try some things out, and we will talk about it. And then it's never a promise, or it's never some kind of a deadline. But it can be start of a new program or something else. It's also our function to do that, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jan. We have to finish because we have more workshops. We have a swimming pool. We have a lot of things we need to work on the human factor also here at the ECOS labs. And there will be a last 1 minute question. What will the audience of the future be like? What do you think? How will it be in 5, 10, 20 years? And while you think about the answer, the first one will be Suzanne. I want to thank again all the speakers from Suzanne from Bloomington, Josep from Espurnes Baroques, and Jan from Bruges. Also all the groups from here. We have again the Cárdenas from Berlin, Fruits and Freds from London, and Treviscan from Madrid, Barbaroques, who could not be here today, from Paris, Anachronia, Cantoria, and also the team that is on the other side of the screen. Thank you very much for this effort. And the University of Murcia, of course, and the Ayuntamiento de Aledo for making this possible, to talk, to share ideas, and hopefully to find new ways to spread early music this amazing 3 days. Suzanne, what will the audience of the future be like?
I think there's a number of ways to approach this. First of all, it always strikes me that people say, oh, early music is dying, classical music is dying, it's only old people in the audience. First of all, we see that's not true, but also 20 years ago, 40 years ago, they were saying the same thing, right? So the people who are old now were young then. So I don't necessarily see their numbers are declining for a number of reasons, but I don't think it's because it's an old person's music, and you guys around this table are proving that. I think, and it always strikes me also that the music school here in Indiana has 1,000 graduate students. It's huge and it's super competitive. So there are so many thousands of people who are engaged in this general sort of music. So I don't think it will die, which is what you hear all the time, at least here, that it's a dying art, etc. I don't believe that. I think that the integration of multimedia and of the human factor is really going to be a saving force for this, and to explore in these ways. I do think though that it is also important, and here a little pitch for musicology. I know I heard a couple digs against it here. I think that I don't see why doing research and looking at original scores and whatnot is mutually exclusive from a heartfelt human performance. I think they go hand in hand, and I think if what we're trying to do is get at the humanity of it, go and see what the humans were doing when they created this in the first place. And I don't think that you can pitch in one direction or the other, sure, too far in one direction or the other, but I think what I'm interested personally in is ensembles who are engaged in what they're doing and interactive and glorious, but B, also do their homework. And that's the kind of audience that we have here. So that's what I'm hoping to see in the future.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. We also believe that early music is not dying, it's very alive, at least here in Aledo. How is it in Espurnes Baroques, Josep? What will be the audience of the future be like?
If I even don't know how is the audience today, asking about how it's going to be the audience in the future is a bit like difficult to answer. But I think it's going to depend on the socioeconomical situation of the young generations, if they can afford or not the fees of the concerts and the tickets. And I don't know how also the climate question is going to be. So we are going to have a lot of mobility or not, or so it's something that I think we have to consider this, and we have a big enigma on that. And but supposing that everything is going to be okay, let's say that I think it's going to be like a distinction between the mass events and like the more like reduced events. Probably I think it's important for us to, or at least for our like average capacity of our halls, which it's 100 or 150 or 200 people, that they have a sense of privilege of being in a unique experience. I think this is going to be the point, to have like human contact, because of course we're a techie world and we're going to go to time by time to a more like social media and more like Zoom and more like like human contact. So I think that every kind of promotion of human contact, of being exposed not to earphones with only the vibrations, reaching us through ears, but reaching the whole body, and that means also real and live performances. I think this is the key we have to play as promoters. Otherwise, maybe we are lost, because I mean, if we go to the whole, which is in Spotify, which is in Instagram, which is in all these media, we have, I think, to focus on the local. Then we can really like have the feet on the floor. Otherwise, everything is here. You don't have the feet on the floor. The globus like is going nowhere.
Unique experiences. This is what for sure people in Espurnes Baroques feels. I know because we have been playing there, and I thank you very much for sharing your comments. What is the comment from Ma Bruges? Jan, what will be the audience of the future be like?
Yeah, first of all, I want a swimming pool too now. But second of all, for me, the change has already started in Bruges, and not only in Bruges, I think in Belgium. What is very important to me is that the generation of the people sitting on the table now should bring a lot of changes to the field of early music. Like, please don't dress like we did for 30 years. If I look at the interesting groups in the festival now, people were dressing like they wanted to dress according to identity, gender, whatever. But please don't be all like we were, this secondhand Barbie dolls wearing the same synthetic black coats and dresses. And please show your tattoos and piercings on stage. Show me who you are. This is the big difference with when we were talking about rock groups, because we know who those people are and we read about them and we can read interviews with them. We don't know who you are. You just come on stage dressed like a Barbie doll and you play. So please don't do this. Whenever this change is going to start on stage, the change is going to come into the concert halls, in the audience as well. And we have seen this in Bruges this year, and it really worked. So for me, the audience of the future is a much more diverse audience. We're always talking about young people, but for this, we really need to change a lot of codes. And one of the codes to be changed is the identity on stage, which is very important for me. Like I said, we tried with a jazz musician playing music by Bach together with a choir. But we underestimated the fact that we organize this in a church, and young people don't want to come to a church anymore. So we need to really rethink everything and rethink every code. And you do this on your side, and we will do this on our side.
Thank you very much, Jan, Josep, Suzanne, Entrevescant, the Gardeners, Flutes and Frets, Anachronia. we will meet you next year at the ECOS Lab, maybe in the festivals, maybe the RIMA Summit, maybe in FEMA, maybe in the EMA in America. There's a lot of places to meet, to talk. I think it has been very interesting. So I just have to thank you for the ideas, and we hope to see you next time. Bye bye. Adios.